What is up, you guys? Welcome back to Tidal Gardens. This video is a long anticipated update to our 600-gallon SPS show tank. It has been a good long while since I last updated this tank. I think that the last video was back in June or July, so we're talking about a good 7 months. And while this tank has been set up for quite a while, I think that we only started planting some of the SPS in here in March. I guess that the nice thing about waiting so long to do an update on this tank is that it actually gives the tank some opportunity to settle in a little bit and for those colonies to grow. And grow they have, because the beauty of having a YouTube channel like this is stuff gets recorded. And I can show you guys the difference between the corals when they were first planted back in March to their growth in June/July and to what they look like today. I would say that most of them have grown in quite a lot. Some of them have comically huge growth rates. And then there's a couple here and there that practically haven't grown at all. We'll get into all that shortly. Let's take a look. The growth of some of these SPS, even though they're highly noticeable, it's actually a little understated, because the idea was just to let these things grow in here and not bother them. But make no mistake, we fragged a lot of these guys, especially some of the higher priced things like the Home Wreckers, Walt Disney's, PC Rainbow, that sort of stuff. A lot of that stuff has been cut, and still you can see that they've grown quite a lot. Corals aside, one big difference that I've noticed in this tank is the rock itself and pretty much any of the surfaces. There is pretty much ubiquitous coverage of coralline algae now. If you're new to this hobby, you might be wondering, what is this fascination with reef aquarists and coralline specifically? It's looked at as a very positive thing. It's a positive growth sign for your aquarium. So I can kind of explain it to you in the most simple terms. Everything wants to colonize a reef aquarium. Whether that be coral or whether that be algae, something wants to fill in this power vacuum that you've created essentially in a blank slate aquarium. All of these things are trying to vie for resources. Ideally, the winner of this should be your corals, but a close second is going to be coralline algae, because coralline suffocates out a lot of the really problematic stuff. For example, when we first started this aquarium, it goes through its new tank ugly phase, because the sort of things that take hold immediately are going to be the really gross problematic stuff like hair algae, like cyanobacteria. Over time though, a lot of those problems are pretty much going to go away on their own, because you're creating an environment that's kind of specifically tailored to grow coral. And over time, as your tank matures and the microfauna really start to get a hold of things, a lot of that stuff is going to get outcompeted by things like the coral itself and coralline algae. You can see now in this tank, the coralline has pretty much covered all of this rock. And anytime that hair algae, if it wanted to grow, it would pretty much be immediately suffocated out by the coralline. I think that's mainly the biggest benefit to coralline. Also, aesthetically, it is kind of nice to have these purple encrusted rocks. You also might be wondering, what did it take for us to go from the really gross, ugly tank all the way 12 months to now? The real secret is just to be patient with it. We did do some little bit of maintenance activity. We did add herbivores, but really a lot of it comes down to just the microfauna development and maturity of the aquarium itself. You can brute force certain tasks to make things go faster. For example, we did do quite a lot of siphoning and scraping and things like that when stuff got really gross. But I can tell you that the times that we've done that, we can probably count that on one hand. So we're literally talking about 5 at the most. And really it comes down to just letting the tank itself figure it out. I think for beginning hobbyists, that can be one of the most difficult things to kind of grasp, because when there is an acute issue in a tank, you always feel like there should be something that you should be doing. But in reality, a lot of things could do with just having a more hands-off approach. And I guess it's one of those skills that you pick up with experience. For example, if I see hair algae, not worried. If I see, however, a certain kind of disease take hold in coral, now we have a problem. But a lot of the new tank stuff, it is super easy to take care of. Largely, you just don't really need to do a whole lot of anything. As far as what we have done differently since the last update, we've added quite a lot more flow to this tank. Originally, I was hoping to handle all of the flow requirements by using 4 Vectra L2 closed loop pumps and relying on the return from the sump. For an SPS tank of this size, that's probably a little bit ambitious. It did provide plenty of flow, but really not the kind of flow that we want. So we added in a couple of Seche Voyager 10 pumps. Those are pretty much the largest power heads that they make, as well as 4 AI Nero 5s. So far, so good on all that. We're going to have to find a way to kind of hide these things a little bit better. We just wanted to get those things in there, kick in the flow. Aesthetically, room for improvement. But as far as their effect in the aquarium, it's been outstanding. We've also planted a few more frags here and there. I didn't really shoot very many of them. You can kind of probably see it on the wide angles a little bit better. And the reason why I didn't bother to shoot very many macros of it is a lot of the new plantings don't really have great color or anything. There's not really a whole lot going on. So they're kind of just like these little brown nubs right now. And I fully expect that within a few months they will take on much better coloration and shape. The nice thing about not really having done a whole lot of changes now for a good few months is that we have this baseline experience of what's going on in this SPS tank. And now we can really start to dial in and tweak certain things that we'd like to see some improvement with. One thing in particular is we want to start feeding amino acids. In the past, this is usually how it goes with us when it comes to amino acids. We feed it, it works pretty well, we run out, and we don't restock for a really long time. Or we start to tweak something else, and then we think, oh, well, maybe we should just try to cut down on the number of variables, or something happens, we don't re-up on amino acids. Lately, we tried our own formulation of amino acids, and it went somewhat poorly. So, back to the original plan, which had worked just fine, was to go back to some of the off-the-shelf products. The off-the-shelf product that we're currently using right now is Aqua Vitro Fuel. And I realized that I don't think it has a lot of amino acids in it. I think it's mostly carbohydrate and maybe some trace elements. But I do remember in the past, we did have some good results. So, we started back into feeding that, and we're going to see if that affects like the growth and coloration. One thing for sure is that it does have a beneficial effect on polyp extension. For example, some of the Millipora especially have gotten super fuzzy, but we've only been feeding it now for like a few weeks. But again, by not having done a whole lot of tweaks for a while, it is nice that when we do these tweaks and we see a difference, we can kind of pinpoint, okay, it is because we're doing something new. And I guess the lesson there is, if you wanted to tweak, try to tweak only one thing at a time and only after a baseline of experience where you would actually notice changes. As far as non-coral livestock that we've added, not a whole lot on this end. We've added one wrasse somewhere in there. We've added a cleaner shrimp, which was kind of hilarious because the fish in here weren't really having any problems. There was no outbreak of ick or anything like that, nothing of the sort. But when we put in this cleaner shrimp, it was kind of hilarious because I think it became the most popular thing in the tank for about 3-4 days. All the fish ran up to it wanting to get cleaned. And I never actually saw it clean any of the fish, but after about a week, the fish probably either A, got cleaned, or got bored and stopped asking, because now pretty much all the fish just ignore the poor little shrimp. One thing that I would like to probably add is something to eat the little crustaceans here and there. We have these little, I just call them, for lack of a better word, like dirt shrimp. They're kind of like these little mini mantis shrimp looking things. They in themselves aren't a pest. They're just a random crustacean. But what they do is they make these mucus nests, and these nests attract detritus. Eventually what happens is they get more and more and more detritus collecting on their network of nests, and eventually problematic algae grows on that concentration of detritus. Occasionally you'll see like a little patch of cyano or something, and it comes off really, really easy. Just siphon it, it's all gone. But the underneath of that is always this detritus and then the mucus nests of these little creepy crawlies. I've got a mandarin in this tank, and this mandarin is the fattest thing I've ever seen. He's got saddlebags of fat because all he does is just like eat these guys day and night. I guess he's doing a pretty good job. Then again, he's only like a 1-inch fish in a 600-gallon tank, so perhaps I would add a couple more fish that would do that task for me. I know that I'm going to get asked this, so let's quickly knock out the water chemistry here. The chemistry in this tank, the nitrates are roughly right around 10 parts per million, between 10 to 20, I would say. The phosphate is at 0.08. It took a while for us to tweak those levels down to where those are consistent, but we're there now. A lot of it was we were getting higher phosphates, and so what we ended up doing was just cleaning our food, pre-rinsing it, and that did make a big difference. Our magnesium, unfortunately, is super high, and that is a result of our calcium reactor. We're using aragonite reactor media, which is ARM for short. It's the high magnesium formulation. And because we were aggressively pumping in CO2 through it, we ended up getting magnesium readings off the charts. So it's probably close to 1500 right now. The idea going forward is to replace most of the media in the reactors with something that's much lower in magnesium. I'm probably looking at a 70% something else and 30% ARM with the magnesium. But that's pretty much it. I think that all the other parameters are where we want them. Really, it's just going to be sitting back and letting things grow in. The last thing that we will probably be messing with in the future is to incorporate some kind of filter sock type mechanical filtration. Originally, I was very hesitant to do anything like that because what a pain it would be to manage that many extra filter socks. The more I thought about it, the more it really occurred to me that, you know what, it's all still one load of laundry. If we're cleaning 1 or 2 filter socks, you may as well clean 50. It's just a matter of going around, wrangling them all up, and just chucking them all into the washing machine with a little bit of Clorox, and you're done. So the next step would be to put together a little custom retrofit for filter socks. I kind of have something in mind. We'll see what that turns into once it's actually implemented. But yes, I would like to add filter socks because another thing that we do maintenance-wise, especially in the grow-out systems, There's plenty of times where we stir up a lot of detritus when we're doing our siphoning, brushing off of all these corals and everything like that. And it would be nice that once that detritus goes down the overflow, that all gets collected before it really settles down in the sump and then possibly gets pumped into all the other tanks. It's just another layer of water polishing, and realistically, now that we have a few filter socks here and there, it is pretty trivial just to be like, okay, it is filter sock day, let's just handle it all at once. All right, guys, that pretty much does it for this update on this SPS show tank. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll do updates on this tank more frequently, but like I said, it is kind of nice to give it a little bit of space and time to grow in so I can actually show you guys some demonstrable growth in these colonies. But I think we're at that point where stuff is settled in and a lot of this growth is going to start to happen faster and faster and faster. So stay tuned for that. If you'd like to see updates on this aquarium, please feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And yeah, we can see what this thing looks like in a few months. All right, guys, that is all from here. Until next time, happy reefing.